You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody! Robocop, the remake, is coming out next Wednesday, and you know what that means?
It means I'm not volunteering for any demonstration involving robots.
Nice one. It also means another episode of Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the game correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. So you guys know the drill. When there's a remake coming out, that means we review the original. In this case, it means 1987's Robocop, directed by Paul Verhoeven.
Yep.
I am so excited because I love this movie.
I like that movie when I was a kid, because Robocop was cool. I didn't really get the whole satire that it was trying to go. Rewatching it now, this movie is awesome. It is spectacular.
So why don't I let you do the synopsis for that movie?
Well, it's in the future, or I guess the present right now, when you think about it.
They never say a specific time.
That is true. And a corporation, I forget the name, I'm sorry.
OCP, Omni Consumer Products.
OCP, yes. They're planning to basically rebuild Detroit into Delta City, make it better, but there's a problem with crime. So they try to introduce a giant big robot, the ED-209, to try and solve the situation, but that was a piece of crap. So instead, somebody else suggests, hey, I have this project called Robocop. We just take a cop that's dead and we make him as a robot. And basically, that's what they do. They build Robocop, but that robot suddenly has, memories of his past life, and he wants to get revenge on, who killed him and basically ruined the lives of his family. And then there's kind of this plot that, the criminals are controlled by some guy in OCP as well, so not all is what appears to be.
Yeah, that's right. He had the criminal played by Red Foreman from That 70s Show.
I know. I was so expecting a boot up his ass line, but, I got none. Kind of disappointing.
Yeah, he has some strong connections downtown. That's an actual quote from the movie.
Yeah.
Why this movie is great, I think, is the plot is almost sort of secondary to the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
The movie starts off with some news footage that is just preposterous of a dystopian future where the people living in said future don't seem to realize they're in a dystopian future, which makes it so funny.
Yeah.
You'll have a newscaster going like, and in other news, the Star Wars project satellite weapon malfunctioned, killing 113 people, amongst them 3 ex-presidents. What a coincidence. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah, it's probably not. And he says it with like, it's sort of kind of a straight face, almost a smile on his face as he's just reading news like nothing, there's nothing to it. You're like, oh my god.
These people could possibly be living in the Hunger Games and not know it, essentially.
Exactly. They probably think it's perfectly normal to, tribute kids every year. It's like, yeah, that's what we do. What's the problem?
And then they have the hilarious commercials. My favorite is the one with the Nukem game, which is essentially a version of Battleship, but with the family playing peaceful negotiations going terribly wrong until somebody launches a nuke.
Yeah.
As a family board game, that was fantastic.
Indeed.
and I think it's those moments that sort of like very Paul Verhoeven deadpan humor that makes the movie so brilliant.
I know, because they're not played for they just integrate to the story. It's just stuff you see on screen and as the story goes on, but it's really. You think that they'd be just secondary stuff you look at, but no, that's what takes center stage. Really, it's really what you just look at those like, wow, this is awesome. Robocop doing his cool stuff is kind of secondary to what's happening there.
Yeah, and it paints the entire universe is what I like about it. It's not like just like they cut away and then there's a joke. It's yes, they cut away and then there's a joke, but the whole movie plays like a joke because like the just the creation of Robocop, you hear in a board meeting going like, so when are we're going to be ready to start your project, which is going to turn out to be the Robocop project. It was like, within 90 days, we should have a subject ready. It's just a matter of time. You're like, you don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And then they cut to Murphy going like, yeah, I just got transferred to a really bad precinct. I'm not sure why. And it's like, yeah, I heard that a lot of people are getting transferred to really bad precinct. I wonder why. And then, of course, he gets killed and then gets turned into Robocop. It's like, oh, that was why.
Yeah.
That's really sick.
I know. And also just the way that, that thing goes around. There's a demonstration with the ED-209 that fails completely, and one guy gets completely shot and killed. And the guy that suggests the Robocop doesn't even see that as, oh my god, somebody dead. He's just like, no, this is a great business opportunity for me, like I need to grab it and, take the reins, and that'll be good for my career. And, that guy's on the table, whatever, he's, yeah.
In case you haven't seen the movie, the scene Nick is referring to is they test out the Ed-209, which is like this big drone machine essentially with like big cannons for arms.
Yeah.
And they test it out in front of a board meeting, and the robot ends up killing one of the people because it doesn't know how to recognize somebody surrendering, essentially.
Yeah, basically the explanation is the sound captors didn't hear the sound of the gun, when the guy dropped it. And it's like, so the robot can't even see? Is that what that means, It basically relying everything on, it's ridiculous.
And so the board meeting's all terrified, and then because they thought they were going to get killed themselves, and then it turns out that it's only that guy that died. Nobody gives a shit anymore.
Yeah.
And the best part, like, if you guys watch this scene again, keep an eye towards the left in the background. There's a dude that pushed the poor sap away from him. And once the guy got shot, he goes to see him and then runs back just to get a glass of water for himself and dunk the glass of water. And I'm pretty sure it's not even his glass of water. Like, he stole someone else's glass of water. He was really thirsty. It's freaking hilarious.
Sometimes 8 glasses of water per day. That's tough, You need to keep your hydration there.
But that to me is the genius of Paul Verhoeven. Like, he fills the screen with these careless, sociopathic assholes.
Yeah.
In every turn. It's brilliant.
I know. Even when Robocop is being built, they don't even care that it was a human being that died. They just treat and that they're goofing around with him and stuff. They're celebrating New Year's with it, and they're putting a hat on him, and it's like, this is just ridiculous.
Oh, because for them it's a machine, it's a robot, and I think it's so brilliant the way it's shot here, because you see it from Murphy's point of view. Like, you see his screen activate, and then it cuts to essentially the year of development, or maybe 3 months. I have no idea.
I think it was 3 months or something like that.
Yeah. And so it cuts to different scenes, and sometimes they're drunk and happy, sometimes they're high-fiving each other, sometimes they're like, hey, should we keep the arms? Like, no, why do you want to keep the arm?
Yeah.
And by making us see it through that angle, you see just a normal office who don't give a shit that they're working on Frankenstein's monster, essentially.
Pretty much.
But you're seeing it through the eyes of Frankenstein's monster for once, and it's just so heartbreaking. It's horrible.
Yes, it is.
And it's just the point of view that makes it that way. I think if we had seen it from a normal point of view, where we see Robocop in the background and the people in the foreground, it wouldn't have had that same heartbreaking effect.
I know, because you kind of feel that, maybe, as you think they're working on Robocop, you tell, it's not Robocop right now, the scene, it's Murphy that's being treated like this, and you're like, he's pretty much being treated like shit, And, you haven't seen Robocop yet, so you don't know he's the robot yet, so you're like, oh my, these people are terrible human beings, is what you experience from the eyes of, wow. First thing, they're supposed to be kind of the heroes that are trying to stop bad crime, but you hate them all,
That's a very good point you bring up. They're supposed to be heroes, but you hate them all. Yeah. It follows the superhero template.
Okay.
Before the superhero movie thing was really a thing. We had Superman, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But you have the introduction of the hero and his origin, which is usually a hard luck story and a tragedy.
Yeah.
And then in the background, you have some villain who's going to be the movie's supervillain taking over a crime syndicate. And then after that, you have a scene of the hero establishing himself as a hero, random scenes of the hero doing heroic things.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he fights the supervillain. And that's the template for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, for Tim Burton's Batman, for even The Dark Knight. All the superhero movies follow that. Daredevil as well. And it's Paul Verhoeven and his writers came up with that formula before the superhero was a thing, and I thought that was intriguing. And of course,
Interesting.
yeah, that was weird. Like,
Yeah.
and of course, because it's Paul Verhoeven, then he perverts it like crazy. So you have the scenes of Robocop doing heroic things in sort of a montage, but
Yeah.
instead of it being a moment of elation, of a moment of awesomeness, it's just Robocop choosing the most disgusting, violent option for any given situation.
I know. He tries to arrest somebody at a gas station. The gas station explodes before he can do it, you know. He goes into a factory. He kills everybody in there to arrest one person. You're like, oh my god, this is crazy.
My favorite part is the two punks who try to rape this woman. And I don't know, it's Paul Verhoeven. He has a wicked sense of humor. I can understand anybody going like, really? We're going to find rape humorous? I don't know. It works. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But they try to rape this person. Of course, Robocop shows up, says, stop, creep, and then shoots him in the balls. And then the woman just, you know, who was sexually assaulted sort of runs to him, oh, my hero, you know, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then he says in this cold, like, uncaring, robotic, almost like accusatory, but not on purpose voice, going like, you have just gone through a sexual trauma. I will call a rape crisis center. Goodbye. It's hilarious.
He's trying to help. It's all good.
It's like the least comforting voice possible.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up is that Peter Weller, who plays Murphy / Robocop, is so good. He's stuck in a really clunky costume, so he only has his mouth and his body language to act with.
Yeah.
And even then, his body language has to be a robot.
Yeah.
And, like, not even just a robot, but, like, the clunkiest 80s robot possible. And that's a deliberate choice. It's a comedic choice. Because Ed 209 moves more smoothly than he does sometimes, which is hilarious.
I know.
Instead of, like, being a human, what do? We think about what we want to do, and then we move towards doing it, so we do 2 or 3 things at the same time.
Yeah.
He will always position himself before doing something. So he'll move his arm, aim, and then stop, then shoot. He'll never do 2 things at the same time, which makes him different from human beings. And it's such a nice detail.
It's true.
And then when he gets mad because he remembers his past and he punches the TV and all that, you feel really bad for him. And I was like amazed how bad I feel for him, considering that all I see is his mouth showing a little bit of frustration and his like waist turning to punch the TV. That's it.
I know, that's true. It's how he conveys like all of that just from, you know, the lower half of his face, and you really feel bad. It might also be because you've been with him the whole movie. You've been as him, as a point of view character even. So, you know, you can kind of feel, and you had heard about his kid and stuff like that, but you know, now you see it even more. So it's, you know, you could totally see it even worse. So it's also, I guess, the situation as in addition to his acting.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's true. It's a poignant moment.
Yeah.
Like, because we're emphasizing the satirical aspect of it, but it's not like the movie is soulless. It has a lot of poignancy.
I know, it's more poignant than, you know, a lot of the movies I've seen with real humans, you know, and it's a robot. That's supposed to be cold, and, you know, it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, no. How did you feel about the special effects?
Actually, there's only one part about the special effects I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
The Ed 209.
Yep.
Kind of looks like it's made out of plastic.
That's interesting.
I would have liked more if it had more of a shine, but I understand that with stop motion, it's very hard to have a shine because you need the light source always at the same time and things can change.
Yeah.
So with reflection, so I understand why it looks like a little more like plastic-like.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I didn't like. The rest was great special effects. I love stop motion. I love, you know, and the costume on Peter Weller was spectacular. So great special effects on that movie, and that they hold up, you know, today, I would say.
I agree for the most part. I about Peter Weller's costume, absolutely. Also the Peter Weller puppet, like when he takes off his the upper half of his helmet, and you see his face and there's like circuitry behind. Half of the time, that's actually a puppet. That's actually not him.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and you can't tell.
No, you really can't.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And the Ed 209, I didn't really notice the reflection. That's an interesting point. But I like the stop motion as well. I like also the sound effects on that thing. It squeals like a pig when it falls down the stairs, which is freaking hilarious.
I know.
So anybody who thinks like, no, Robocop is a movie to be taken seriously. Ed 209 falls down the stairs and then squeals like a pig.
Yeah.
This is a funny movie, people.
It is. I mean, this is a weapon that was supposed to design to maintain order and law, and they were going to sell it to the military. Can't even go down a flight of stairs. I mean, it's a joke. Come on, seriously.
It's hilarious. Well, I mean, Dick Johnson even says it. It's like, this was going to be a perfect contract. It doesn't work, so it would have been replacement parts all the time, so it would have been a permanent contract with, like, with our production going constantly because the damn thing doesn't work.
Yeah, pretty much.
And also, like, the fact that it's undiscriminatory. Like, it just shoots the crap out of everything, which tells you a little bit about the American military's policies regarding war. Like, yeah, we'll put these drones. It just shoots everything. It's like, little Pulverhoven political comment going on there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is pretty brilliant. But the one that I didn't like as much is when, like I said, we're going into spoilers during the review. Dick Johnson falls down the window, falls off the window and then falls. Like, I thought it looked really weird. Like, his arms looked too long, and it's like he transformed into a mutant while falling. Like, that's the one where I was like, ew, really? That's your last bit of special effect, and it's the shittiest one?
That's true. I thought falling down the window, isn't that the easiest thing to film? They just have a stuntman just do a fall on an airbag. I mean, you would think that'd be the easiest one to get right.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, the Peter Weller puppet and all the stop motion. That's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that, though. I guess I wasn't paying that much attention towards the end there, because, like, hey, the movie's over, you know.
Well, no, plus it's the satisfaction of him getting what's coming to him in such a clever way, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was watching it, but because I've rewatched the movie so many times, you start paying attention to these details. I'm like, oh, that looked awkward.
I'm going to have to recheck that scene then, just to see. I find it interesting that OCP, they talk about how they go into certain areas that they thought nobody could ever make profits out of, and, you know, they become profitable. Like, they dupe the police, they're in charge of the police and try to make a profit out of that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that they mentioned, like, garbage collection as well.
Mm-hmm. And prisons.
Prisons, yeah, and garbage collection. And because my friends in Virginia, they actually have their garbage collected by a private company, not by anything public. And they get better service than we do collected, you know, our garbage collected by the city.
I'm sure.
And it's probably cheaper, you know, to collect per person. So it's so interesting that, yeah, you know, the private sector sometimes, you know, good thing, you know.
I'm not surprised that for something like garbage collecting, which is an essential service, but not one where you need quotas or anything, it's something that's always going to have business for them, that a private company runs it very well.
Yeah.
In the case of something like prison, which is also happening today, private prison system is a thing, then it's the opposite. It's a clusterfuck.
Okay.
Something where it actually affects our system of values and our system of crime and punishment.
Yeah.
You privatize that, it becomes a little bit problematic because then you have an interest in corruption, you know?
Exactly. That's one of the things in Robocop as well, where there's the directive that he cannot, you know, get in the way of anybody in OCP.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hidden directive as well, so even Robocop doesn't even know about it until it happens. So it's like kind of interesting there.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's a hidden directive, but at the same time not that hidden in the sense that the police chief, he's an honest cop or anything, but he gets sort of told off by the OCP people. I was like, you don't tell me what to do. I take my orders from corporate. I'm like, that's not better. Which I thought was a really funny joke.
Yeah, that's true.
So clearly OCP is above the law already in that society.
Yeah, but again, because they're in charge of the police.
Yeah.
And not very good in charge, because apparently the police is going on strike. So yeah, doing a poor job of it, but still, you know.
Well, no, actually on purpose, because they're trying to buy off the city. They're trying to create Delta City, the first privatized city. So they're drowning Detroit on purpose.
That's true.
So they're encouraging crime. They're essentially giving cops the worst conditions so that they don't do their job, so that the whole city collapses, and then they can create their Delta City.
Yeah, with those, you know, awesome machines that can't recognize sounds, but still are going to, you know, protect every citizen from crime.
So I mean, it already shows you the level of corruption where when you allow privatized companies to handle public services of this level.
Yeah.
But actually, that's another good point. Like, this movie is so prophetic. You know, like we've mentioned how you said like garbage collecting companies are already privatized in the U.S. I've mentioned prison cops is actually a thing that happened in Detroit.
Really?
Yeah, and Detroit, it's not doing well right now, and that's also part of the Robocop thing.
That's Robocop 2, though. In Robocop 1, Detroit was doing okay, you know.
Well, it's slowly collapsing to give way to Delta cities. So it's on its way.
Yeah, but it wasn't bankrupt, like, you know, unfortunately happened in real life and happened in Robocop 2.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. And then there's the idea of drones in the military.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, this movie knew shit that we did.
I know. That's why I said it was enjoyable when I watched it as a kid, you know, but now it's like, wow. I'm almost wondering what do they need to make a remake? Just, you know, repackage it and, you know, make the ED-209 look a little shinier. I'd be happy with it.
Give Robocop the internet instead of that blade that comes out of his fist.
That blade is awesome.
That blade is awesome, but it's sort of like he uses it for data collection.
Yeah.
And you're like, we have the web.
Well, he kind of goes on the web instead of using a keyboard. He uses, you know, the blade. So,
yeah, but he should have Wi-Fi in him.
I don't know, you know, you have to reset him when the Wi-Fi, you know, it's like... I don't have a connection. Have you tried resetting yourself? Yes. Well, reset yourself again, please. Well, check what's happening.
Speaking of technology, though, they didn't predict the internet, but they predicted GPS.
Yeah.
They predicted the DVD.
I know. I was so surprised. Well, it could be a CD still, but no, it's right because it's
video.
Yeah. So they did predict. You know, just put a shiny disc, and the guy stopped talking. And was like, "My God, that's 80. That's in the 80s. That's crazy."
They have a time portal. Yeah. They saw the future.
That was even before laser discs.
Yeah.
The disc was the exact size of a DVD. It was perfectly fine, and it was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm telling you, they had a time machine. It's crazy how much this movie predicted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not dated like, you know, crazy stuff like Johnny Mnemonic that you're like, oh, this is so stupid, you know? You know, it's like, oh no, this makes perfect sense, you know. You could totally see a guy, you know, I'm going to show you something, and you plug in he's like, yes. Okay, there is one scene that's kind of dated.
Yeah.
You know, I see when one of the guy that created Robocop is celebrating with like cocaine and 2 hookers. You know, high-powered executive, they kind of celebrate a different way now. Cocaine is kind of like, you know, it's a thing of the 80s, you know. it kind of, you know, didn't move on.
Well, Rob Ford would disagree with you about it being outdated.
Well, Canada is kind of outdated, but, you know.
Yeah, that and Lewis's haircut.
Yes, oh my God.
It was very 80s-ish.
Yes. How would you call that? It's just so, you know, curly on the top and on the side, like all business. Is like a reverse mullet. I don't know.
I don't know. It's one of those things that existed in the 80s and is best never to exist anywhere else. Which
is funny because she still need to wear a helmet as the police officer. You'd think that thing would just, you know, get ruined every day. I was like, no, 80s hair.
No, well, 80s hair is so full of product. I'm actually not surprised that that it's harder than the helmet.
That is probably true. Why even wear a helmet? Just, you know, duck and you'll be fine.
Another joke relating to products that made me laugh so hard. There's a commercial about like a Godzilla monster type thing. And it turns out to be like a car, like the something 600.
I know.
And it's like America, bigger is better. And then for the rest of the movie, everybody drives that fucking car. It's so funny. Like, it's all in the background. Nobody makes a big case about it. Yeah. But everybody's driving this fucking gas guzzler. And it is actually said to be a gas guzzler because the mayor mentions it in passing. That's so funny.
I know even when the mayor, I don't know, is it the mayor that's taken hostage? And the guy wants, you know, he wants a recount and he wants his old office and he wants a big car, you know, a gas guzzler, screw those, you know, efficiency. Like, wow, that's nice.
And it's that car. Yeah. Because the other guy, the negotiator goes like, oh, you mean like the Lexus 6000? Like, and then the bad guys are driving that car 6000. Everybody's driving that fucking car. That's so funny.
Yep.
But going back to that scene with the mayor being taken hostage, we never see his face, but they do make the mayor black, which is kind of cool. Another thing that Verhoeven predicted, better racial equality.
Yeah.
And better equality between the sexes as well. The police, men and women. Like, Lewis is actually senior to Murphy, and she acts like she's senior to Murphy, and Murphy never questions her authority.
I know. That's crazy. In the movie, the guy, especially a guy that can do like a cool trick with a gun like that.
Yeah.
No, he's in charge. Seriously.
Especially in the 80s. Yeah, totally.
If you recruit, no. Yeah, I look at the trick I can do with my gun. I'm in charge.
And, like, she drives, it's like, oh, there's a call, we gotta take our cars, and she drives, and he doesn't go like, oh, I'll drive. Like, he doesn't do any of that. It's perfect equality between the sexes, which is kind of neat. In the 80s, you really didn't have that in movies.
They used to even have that now, honestly.
Yeah, it's true, eh?
Alright, now we were supposed to do the review of the original Robocop with Chris and Frank from the Dreamer's Edge podcast, but we couldn't coordinate and they didn't get to see the movie on time. However, we did get a chance to get their thoughts on the upcoming remake. So, here goes.
I have to say, like, I watched the original, like, so many times in the 80s and 90s. It was a staple of our VCR for some reason. So, anyways,
I really cost $400.
Yeah, I would buy that for $1. I would not buy the original for $1.
How can I say this in a peaceful way? I don't want, Robocop to be Michael Bay. From the trailer, this is what I got. Robot. That's all you see. It's just a bunch of shots of Robocop either shooting or coming out of a car or doing something or doing that or doing this. No idea what the plot is. Either the Ed 209, is in there. You see him at the beginning. So I'm sure if they're doing the remake they're going to have to redo the fight scene. But you get no sense at all of what it is. I think they're banking on the excitement of people seeing Robocop and saying, oh, Robocop, that movie was cool, so this is going to be great. Hey, look, there's Robocop again. Oh, Robocop again. And just getting people just on the excitement of that, but without showing anything at all.
The trailer seems like an identical retelling of the original movie. The same way Total Recall was.
No, I think it's...
Disagree?
I disagree because he knows he used to be Alex Murphy in the trailers.
Exactly. And
it's very vague thing, considering that, the character in the original Robocop eventually figures it out anyways.
He figures it out, but he's not attached to that previous identity that much.
He still calls Murphy seems to do this, or Murphy had a family. Like, he knows that Murphy existed, but he doesn't call himself Murphy. You know what I mean?
Like, you mean in the original or in the new one?
In the original.
The original.
Whereas this one, he's holding a scientist by the neck and going like, what did you do to me? So it seems like a very different character.
Oh, I don't know, man. Like, I get the feeling... I'm not exactly sure what they're going to try to tell in this one, which is going to be different.
It's going to be a drone thing, which makes it makes perfect sense. It's not a bad spin, I guess, It doesn't really explain why we need a robot.
I was very disappointed to see that the Ed 209 was actually functional. It looked at the little girl and, it said not a threat instead of just unloading the cannons at her, So that's a disappointment a little bit,
Well, I think the idea is, Americans are not giving that much of a shit about drones, not as much as I feel we should. And the idea was like, what if it was in your backyard? How would you feel about it then?
Yeah.
So, I think that's what they're going to go with.
Good. Yeah, I'm actually curious to see the movie, to be honest, based on that trailer. I wasn't before, but I am now.
I don't know. Like, there was a measure, to me, the dystopic feel of the original, and just the way in which human life was so cheap, juxtaposed with the war on drugs, and certainly, the fascination of Americans for violence, and, the easy answer to the drug war, which is to basically create this massive robot who's just going to go in there and kill all the bad guys. Like, I get that in a sense, but I don't know. The drone metaphor works unless you confront the fact that legislation would make it possible, right?
Right.
So, somebody somewhere basically voted for that Robocop to be on the streets, at which point people can complain all they want. Well, I mean, those are what your elected officials are doing, as opposed to, the original Robocop was something of an answer that was desired. They take Detroit, which, by the way, was a bit of a prophetic pick for, a town that is completely swallowed up by crime and needs, the psychotic answer for, anyways.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. Like, I think there's going to be a bit of a sleight of hand storytelling, but like, I think that's common in science fiction at the same time. Like, you look at the Hunger Games, or like Battle Royale, the Japanese Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. It's like
the original Hunger Games.
If you will. It's like, I'd like to see the council meeting where that got passed into law, or like the purge. Like, I want to see how that happened politically.
Yeah.
It's sleight of hand storytelling, but you know what? That's part of science fiction for me.
Maybe not show us the council meeting, and but I mean,
You're fired.
I wanted to find out more about how that society got to there, and made that decision.
I don't think you could ever do it though, because it's one of those premises that makes no effing sense in terms of realism. It's sort of like, I can suspend my disbelief if you start me off in this society, but if you try to make me believe that it was started from a normal society all the way to that, you're gonna have a hard time.
Even if you were to tell people how much we rely on these phones that have all our lives in them,
Yeah.
from like 12 years ago, that wouldn't have been even plausible. Like, how many small little steps have gotten us to this place so quickly, So I think it's better, to just kind of jump in and say, this is the world,
I'm working on a spec script, so we'll see.
All right, so that's it for our Robocop discussion. I am actually going to review it for the site, so look for that written review.
Cool.
When the movie comes out. And
I might read that review and decide if I want to go see it or not.
Oh, there you go. A lot of people have written us to let us know, hey, it would be great if we knew in advance what movies you were going to talk about so we can watch in advance. I think that's really great feedback. Thank you so much for those who wrote us to tell us that. There's a lot of you, so I'm not going to name you all, but thank you. That is the sort of thing that when I read it from so many people, I was like, my God, why didn't we think of that ourselves? That's a really good point. So from now on, we're going to tell you what movie we're going to be reviewing the following week. So next week, we are going to talk about Endless Love. The remake is coming out on February 14. So on February 12th, we're going to review the 1981 original Endless Love.
All right.
Until then.
Yep.
If you want to share with us your love, hate, general thoughts about Robocop, the Robocop series, Robocop the remake, Cops That Are Robot.
Yeah.
You can write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We love your feedback. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We're also on YouTube. We're also on iTunes. If you could write us an iTunes review or like us on Facebook, we would really appreciate it. It helps us continue to generate content of cybernetic quality.
My God.
Otherwise, I will have no choice but to transfer Nick to a really shitty district and wait for him to get his hand and face blown off.
That's too bad, because I don't like baby food, so I couldn't survive as Robocop.